Okay, so let's jump into this. So I'm very pleased to announce that we've actually got Scott Shearer online. And Scott's an old friend of New Zealand. We've had him down here at least once. We'd love to have him down here more often. I couldn't think of a better person to be opening up our presentation this morning, our last session, session 4 on precision ag and the future of precision ag. So Scott's title is the current and future role of precision ag in the US, maize systems. Scott, not corn systems, maize systems. Professor Scott Shearer is joining us via video call from Ohio State University, where he is the chair of the Food, Agriculture and Biological Engineering Department. His talk will focus on the role of precision ag in the US, as I mentioned. Without further ado, Scott, we can see you, and over to you.
Well, David, thank you very much. Good morning to everybody in New Zealand. It's Monday evening here, and I'm actually in Louisville, Kentucky at the Agricultural Equipment Technology Conference, holed up in a hotel room, but we'll get through this. I want to share some things that are going on in Ohio right now, and David indicated that we talk a lot about precision agriculture, and that's definitely true. One of the things we're trying to do is expand that a little bit, and we begin talking, we talk a lot about digital agriculture, at least myself and my colleagues here at Ohio State University. So I'm going to go through some things happening in North America, get you thinking a little bit, and maybe suggest where things are headed in the future. One of the things, I assume everything's okay. You can hear me okay in the venue there? We good?
1 second, Scott. Yep. Yep, I had to come back to the mic. Yep, all good. Beaming in, lovely.
All right, very good. So one of the things that if you follow social media here in the States, you'll also get a kind of some indication of what the machinery companies are doing. Then products are released at various shows. On the left-hand side, I got a John Deere 18-liter engine. If anybody's kind of following what's going on with Deere and the high horsepower range, they've been using a lot of other companies' engines, historically forage harvesters and the like. Here's a picture that got picked up off the internet. There is a suggestion that Deere is going to have a 4-track tractor coming out here pretty soon that'll be well in excess of the 620 or 640 horse now that they have. Just recently, CNH Industrial introduced their 715 horse 4-track tractor, and they're using a 16-liter engine in that. My only point in mentioning this is I kind of see this as the tractor wars going on right now for the high horsepower. Obviously, something's happening very similar to that in combines. I keep wondering to myself, tillage tools, are the width and the frame's going to hold up to some of these higher horsepower tractors? And so, again, just get people thinking about where things are headed. We go back a couple of years, and Deere introduced their fully autonomous 8R tractor. I know there's a number of these out on test right now. It's going to be interesting. It used to be we saw a lot of startup companies talking about autonomy. Now virtually all tractor manufacturers are talking about autonomy. And I think it's one of those things that's going to change the marketplace a little bit. I also want to make mention of the fact that currently the reason why we continue to go larger in the U.S. obviously is being more timely in field operations. We have rainfall events that are occurring in the Midwestern part of the U.S., and we've lost, at least in the state of Ohio, 5 days of field operations in the spring and 5 days of field operations in the fall. And it's because of rainfall events that are greater in terms of magnitude, the precipitation that falls, and then a greater frequency. And we have data over 30 years to suggest that that's occurring. Everything continues to get bigger, but again, the one thing that is kind of inherent to all of this equipment is it all still has a human operator on it. We'll get on to the next slide here. Part of what made this tractor fully autonomous, if you look, and I don't know whether you can see my cursor here, but right in the center, on the right-hand image, center top of the cab, is a stereo vision system. It's 2 cameras. It's driven by an array processor, and it's been trained using artificial intelligence. If you look on the left-hand side of the cab, there's another stereo vision system. Over here on the right-hand side of the cab, another stereo vision system, 3 in total. And then we look on the front of the weight bracket, there's another 3 stereo vision systems. It's my understanding Deere, in the AI training, artificial intelligence training of this of these systems, used about 40 million images. And again, when we talk about artificial intelligence and we talk about where things are headed, these AI-driven systems are going to kind of rule the day in agriculture. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on artificial intelligence because of the importance and what it's going to drive in terms of things in the future. Last November, I was fortunate to be able to travel to Germany. While I was there at Agritechnica, which is obviously Europe's largest show, and I know that some of you might attend on occasion. Great place to be to see what's going on. But as I walked around the multiple venues, the one thing that kind of came home to me multiple times is the fact that nearly every major manufacturer has some sort of autonomy offering. By the time it was all said and done, I counted up about 35 or 30 robotic tractor or agricultural equipment offerings of one form or another. Now, some of those were repeated with some different manufacturers, but autonomy is something that we see what's going on in Europe. We see what's going on in the States. I think it's here. I don't think it's going away. The question is how quickly we gravitate to removing the human operator from the field. I also like following the people at Swarm Farm. Many of you know this is an Australian-based company. Jossie and her husband, Andrew Bate, were in the U.S. back in June of last year. I had the opportunity to spend most of the day with them talking about how their autonomous offering is going in terms of spray application. The one thing that kind of came home to me about this was I call it a weather responsive sprayer. That is, whenever it's not suitable to be doing spray applications, wind speeds are too high or an inversion is predicted, they have the ability to shut down the machines. Other than that, 24/7 operation when it's practical is possible. And again, as we think about autonomy and we think about opportunities, there's a lot going on and different ways of thinking about things. This is an automation package from a startup here in the United States. This is a Sabanto automation package dropped on a Kubota M5 tractor. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, a little bit later on. We've been using this. This is out at the Molly Caron Agricultural Center, which is Ohio State University's farm just west of Columbus. And here we have it pulling a batwing mower, about a 15-foot batwing mower. This is connected using cell phone technology, and I'm going to come back and talk about cell phone technology and autonomy. But it's truly a dynamic time when we look at a lot of these product offerings in the U.S. By the way, on the day that I shot this video, Andrew, the gentleman that runs a lot of our autonomous equipment for our research program, I looked around the field and I couldn't find him. I said, Andrew, where are you at? And I called him up on the cell phone. He answered and I said, where are you at? He goes, well, I got that tractor going. It looked like it was doing okay. I had work to do, so I'm over here on the North Farm. So he was about 5 or 6 miles away. We're beginning to think about this autonomy thing and safety in terms of the need to post fields and warn people about autonomous equipment operating in those fields. This is a statement that was made by Craig Rupp. Craig Rupp is the CEO, and this statement kind of caught my attention. This is a few years back, but Craig said, as a general rule, our machinery costs for planting operations are about 25 cents per horsepower hour. So if I got a 400 horse tractor, I'm out pulling a planter, it's going to cost me about $100 an hour to operate that tractor. He said ours are down to 7 cents per horsepower hour. And so as we look to the future and begin thinking about autonomy, the question becomes, what happens in terms of iron? Do our tractors continue to get larger, or do we go the other direction and do they get smaller? I'm going to say last summer into the early fall, I was sitting in my office one night And I got online and I configured a John Deere 9RX tractor, one of their 4 tracks, the largest one they made. What I was going for, at least in US dollars, was trying to see if we got into $1 million tractor yet. I could only get it to $999,390. As you build tractors, there's a lot of options you can't put on the tractor together. But the best combination, at least I'll say best, the highest cost combination was got me to $999,390. I'm certain that the tractor costs are above that now in terms of breaching the $1 million barrier. But when I took that purchase price and divided by the engine horsepower, it came out to about $1,560 per engine horsepower. In other words, everything was kind of bumping along pre-pandemic at about $1,000 per engine horsepower, but we saw a pretty significant jump. And I realized that farmers could buy this tractor a little bit less expensively, discounts and things like that. But just remember that number, $1,560 per engine horsepower. Got online the same evening and I maxed out a Kubota 8R, I'm sorry, Kubota 5R, not 8R, 5M, M5 tractor. I'll get my numbers right. I chose a tractor without a cab on it. The point I was trying to make here is what the iron cost is. It was about $70,000. I divided by the engine horsepower. And at 100 horse, I get about $700 per engine horsepower. And so what I'm trying to get people to think about is how much technology is there on a tractor, and then what kind of additional features were added to the tractor to take care of the human operator. So a pure iron cost were about $700 per engine horsepower. And again, when we look at the tractors with all the bells and whistles, so to speak, we're at about double that by the time we get done with technology and accommodating human operator. I put these two images on this slide for a specific reason. We had a Chad Colby here in the U.S. who is a bit of an aficionado on CNH industrial equipment. I know I got a John Deere tractor here, but Chad was going around and speaking to farmer groups, and he was telling bankers, when a farmer comes in to borrow money on a new tractor, the first thing you should ask them to do is get out their smartphone and lay it on the desk. And he went on to say, as the banker, you need to pick that up. And if it's older than 2 years old of age, he said, don't loan him the money. Don't loan the farmer the money on the new tractor. I think the point he was trying to make was, as technology continues to evolve, and tractor technology specifically, you have to make certain that the farmer is going to be able to take advantage of the technology. We know that devices like this are going to be needed to set up the tractor in the future, but there's a couple other things going on here that I want to get you thinking about. The cell phone on the left is actually an iPhone 13. I probably should have an iPhone 14 now. And usually we get a new cell phone, not because the previous one that we owned quit performing its function, but rather because it has additional memory, it's faster, a better processor, maybe better camera technology. I want to kind of juxtapose that to the machine on the right. If that tractor is on a farm in the state of Ohio, we know that Ohio farmers are only going to use it about 300 hours a year. And if that tractor has a life of 15,000 hours, it means it's going to be on a U.S. farm anyways, probably for 50 years. So the question I've been asking is, how long before the tractor on the right becomes technologically obsolete? And so I'm trying to get people to think about, we have great equipment today. I don't want to take anything away from the equipment manufacturers. That's not my point. But we know that that tractor is going to be around a long time. By the way, we ended up with data on about 1,200 John Deere tractors in the state of Ohio, 8Rs, 8RXs, 9Rs, and 9RXs. And we found the average use of that tractor in the state of Ohio is 298 hours a year. It was on public thoroughfares somewhere between 7 and 9% of the time. And then that tractor spent about 31 to 32% of its time idling. When it was all said and done, those farmers are making those capital investments and generally using that tractor in the field about 185 hours a year. And so again, a high capital cost item. And the question becomes, as we move towards autonomy, what does our utilization happen? So little conversation about precision planting here, I thought I'd share this next thing with you just to give you perspective. Henry Ford said if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And so I think one of the greatest things to come to market recently, and again, it was pioneered by Precision Planting and John Deere, at least here in the States, was high-speed planting. I'll play this video. Well, maybe I will. I'll get back to the other one. I'll play this video for you, and I think it's kind of an interesting one. In that we had a Case IH planter pulled by a quad track. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, this was a replicated study. We got up to, I think the fastest we got was about 18.1, 18.2 miles an hour, relatively flat location. And this attracted a lot of attention alongside the road. By the time Andrew, who was driving the tractor, got to the end of the field, there were about a dozen pickup trucks pulled over, and all the farmers were wondering what the heck he was doing. I always tell people this was a replicated study. So he planted at 5 miles an hour, 7.5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, 12.5, and then as fast as the tractor would go. He found out that auto steer on this Case IH quad track kicked out at 18.3 miles an hour. He also learned he needed to plant more border passes at the end of the field. The reason why I'm telling you this is not to suggest that you should plant at 17 or 18 miles an hour, but rather to get high-speed planting as a real possibility. And what I'm really talking about is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 miles an hour. This technology works and works well. One of the things when this was taken to yield, 203 bushel an acre on corn, no discernible difference between ground speeds in terms of planting. Now, one of the things I will caution you about is the residue managers become rock throwers. So again, technology that works and works well, don't plant at 18 miles an hour. If you do, wear your seatbelt. There are some challenges with moving at higher speeds in the field. As we go towards this autonomy thing, there's a lot of things going on, and the form of the equipment may change. This is a sprayer out of Europe, Echo Robotics. They're using artificial intelligence and robotic arms to do spray application. Obviously, it's powered by agrivoltaics or solar. I think it's kind of interesting when we begin thinking about how some of this technology is going to change the form of the machines. And so I always like showing this just to get people thinking. Had a lot of drones used in the state of Ohio. We have about 25 companies now spraying with drones, generally fungicides on both corn and soybeans. Talked to one group that claimed that they had sprayed 25,000 acres with 8 drones. I talked to another gentleman who bought 2 drones, sprayed about 5,000 acres in a 30-day window. We're starting to see spray application with drones kind of take off. By the way, this is a Helio, I believe 272, fully loaded with spray material and batteries. This weighs about 386 pounds. And so we continue to see the size on these go up. Rotor tip to rotor tip is about 13 feet. Again, I'll apologize to some of you on the English units here. Talk a little bit about convolutional neural networks and get you thinking about what AI is and what it isn't. We have an image on the left-hand side. It goes through multiple layers. It's processed as it goes through those layers. And then we get output on the right-hand side. This is kind of where artificial intelligence is at. Those convolutional layers are really extracting features. Could be texture of the image. It could be lines or line segments, curved versus straight. All in all, it's going to extract about 10 to 15,000 features. We then go through a classification process. And so when we begin thinking about how these products are going to come to the marketplace and what products we're going to have, this is kind of the basis, okay? The company that's kind of accelerated this is NVIDIA. NVIDIA probably has, I don't know, somewhere around 80% of the AI market, and they continue to build better, faster graphical processing units. They kind of got their start in the gaming industry and with cryptocurrencies, but now I think they've really found their sweet spot with artificial intelligence. Some of their processors are as low as $99 a piece. And we're starting to see a lot of products enter the marketplace now using NVIDIA graphical processing units. I'll say a little bit about Central Ohio. We've been kind of become the Silicon Valley of the Midwest. We have Intel moving in, but we also have Google, Meta, and AWS. And when you look at the whole semiconductor industry, it's kind of an interesting time. I've also understand that we could be incurring an energy penalty of about 25% when AI fully gets implemented. In other words, our electrical power consumption could increase at least in North America by as much as 25% to run these AI engines and systems. 3 products in the marketplace now. There's more coming. There's Deere See and Spray, and as you look across that spray boom, please note that there's only a limited number of spray nozzles on. In other words, spray nozzles turn on when a weed is detected. It's a camera and processor combination. You see the A-frames. There are cameras mounted on each one of those A-frames. A product out of France, Bilberry, that was recently purchased by Trimble. It's being introduced in the U.S., and so we'll probably see some of the Bilberry product offerings. Again, a camera and processor combination. And then there's Green Eye Technology out of Israel. Again, it's a camera processor combination for, in this case, green on brown or green on dark, and some of them now are green on green in terms of being able to discriminate weeds within the canopy. I agree with the previous individual. We're going to use this a lot more than just spraying weeds. We're going to use it to manage our fungicides. We're going to use it to manage insecticides, insect feeding damage. We're also going to use it to manage nutrients in the future. Getting close to the end here, but I do want to talk about a couple more things here quickly. Most of you are aware of reCAPTCHA. It is how you prove you're not a computer when you log on to a website. I want to point out that a lot of the images are going to be transportation related, in this case crosswalks. I've seen a lot of stoplights, but what you're doing is picking out all the images with partially including a lot of these factors that are related to the automotive sector, if you will, bicycles, cars, trucks, buses, and things like that. What the engineers at Google are actually doing is they're having you classify their images for them for Google Car. So as they build out their artificial intelligence, one of the most expensive components of that is having the images labeled or classified. This one was shared with me, and here in North America, you know, we always distinguish between pieces of agricultural equipment such as tractors, combines, and sprayers. And this is my suggestion to you: when the engineers don't necessarily understand the industry they're operating in, results may not be so great. So in this case, they want all squares with tractors. And in most cases here in North America, if we had farmers responding to this, they'd look at the image and they would say there are no tractors in this image, there are only combines. So they would not necessarily select any of those squares on the bottom. So again, you got to think about artificial intelligence, how it's going to unfold, how it's going to be utilized. The family that came up with precision planting, they sold it off, obviously, went to Climate Corp and then the mechanical components to AGCO. That family is reformed, and now they're reformed a business, if you will, 360 Yield Center. But one of their products now is a high clearance robotic irrigator. In this case, it lays a hose out. It's low volume, about 200 gallons a minute. This is internet connected. In the case of the tractor that I showed you previously and this machine, they're using Verizon, which is a wireless carrier here in the United States. But the machine irrigates on the way out and on the way back. What's really happening, though, this has become a way for our farmers in the U.S. to manage animal nutrient sources, both swine and dairy waste. I understand New Zealand is doing a lot of pasture-based, but we have a lot of confinement animal housing here in the U.S., and one of our major challenges is land application of those animal manures, either up front before the growing season or at the end. This machine's going to allow us to apply those nutrients all year long. Talk about cell phone connectivity. We'll bring this to an end here pretty quickly, but a lot of people are talking about the need for 5G as we automate. 5G is sparse in the United States at this point in time. We look in the state of Ohio, kind of going from Cincinnati through Columbus up to Cleveland in the northeast corner. If you're along I-71 or the Interstate 71, pretty good connectivity with 5G. The rest of the state's in trouble, though, as we think about the rollout of these autonomous systems and the need for perhaps streaming video to monitor these machines. We're working with a company out of Texas, GXC. GXC has created a private 4G LTE. When I talk about 4G LTE, this is a private cellular network. The FCC, Federal Communications Commission here in the U.S., has set aside the old citizens band radio frequencies. And if a farmer chooses, they can buy the hardware. The cost is about $13,000. This will give them about 1.5 mile to 2 mile radius in terms of connectivity, and the farmer becomes their own cell phone provider. We put these network access points and the antennas on the top of our grain legs, and now we're providing our own cell phone service. Again, private 4G LTEs. They'll be moving to private 5G. This could be a solution in rural areas without cellular connectivity. This is just showing the connectivity of ours and what kind of signal strength we have. Generally, the reds and oranges are going to be somewhere 80 to 90 megabits per second and above. I'll remind everybody 5G will give us probably a 7 or 10x rate in terms of connectivity, and that's when things get interesting. I'm going to close out with this. This is a Gartner hype curve. We get the innovation trigger on the left-hand side. Products come out, they're introduced. The farm press gets a hold of them. We go to the peak of inflated expectations. Farmers start buying those. They don't quite perform as maybe indicated in some of the advertisements. So we go through the trough of disillusionment. Then there's a slope of enlightenment. Farmers begin to figure out, and crop consultants, how to use the technologies and make money. And then we get out to the plateau of productivity. This was a curve that was kind of patterned after some of what Monsanto did back in 2017. Myself and 2 individuals in Canada kind of updated this. A lot more technologies on the curve. But if we look out on the plateau of productivity, I want to point to a couple things. Automated guidance, yield monitors, these are all standard items now. They come on the machines. In a lot of cases, you really don't have an option. It is part of the base cost of the machine. My point to farmers is really where you want to adopt technologies is in that slope of enlightenment. That's where people are going to make money with them. By the time you get out on the plateau of productivity, it may be necessary to adopt those technologies to remain competitive. I know this is a bit disconcerting, but we're going to see more technologies coming to agriculture, and we're going to see this whole turnaround time accelerate. So with that, I'm done with my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions, time permitting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have we got Mike? Yep, we have. That's awesome. Thanks, Scott. I don't think anybody's asleep, Scott. So that's all good. Any questions to Scott? Yes, there is one here. We'll get the mic. So hopefully you should be able to hear the question, Scott, when we mic up here.
Yes.
Thanks, Scott. That was a really good talk and quite eye-opening with what's going to happen in future with AI. My question is around the technology that you briefly touched on, which is green on green and green on brown. I'm assuming like green on green is quite hard because you have to load up the sensors with lots of data information, like around weeds and stuff, because weeds can differ in different areas, the same weed. And I'm assuming it's going to be a lot easier with the AI technology coming forward, so it's not going to be that hard. But the question is that, in your opinion, what is a good percent control that green on green can give you?
Well, I want to be careful here because the intelligence is going to be necessary to have the data to create the intelligence. Okay, and there's going to be a question as to who creates the intelligence. Is it going to be the companies that own the technologies and they want to monetize that intelligence? It is quite likely that when the sprayer travels to the field that you might have to download the intelligence for that day, for that stage of crop growth, for historical weather patterns up to that point in time, perhaps even the variety or hybrid of crop in the field, and maybe even the cultural practices, whether it was no-till with a lot of residue in the background or more of a conventional tillage system. The point that I want to make in this is generally we're not talking about hundreds of images, we're not talking about thousands of images, we're not even talking about hundreds of thousands of images. we're probably going to be talking about millions of images to create this intelligence. And you noted very correctly that green on green is more difficult than green on brown. And I'll remind everybody that green on brown, we can look at spectral reflectance a lot of times and do a pretty good job there. When it gets on green, that's a whole different story. It's going to be interesting to see who does what. We know the chemical companies are going to take a bit of a hit. In other words, the volume that herbicides they sell may be reduced. We're not going to get away from broadcast applications. That's still going to be around, but in terms of some of our cleanup herbicide applications, I do expect to see these vision systems used. But I think you're 100% correct who's going to develop the intelligence, and I think that's one of the things that industry is struggling with right now.
No, that's awesome. Okay, we have time for one more question. In fact, we don't have time, but Scott's online, so we'll make time. Any other questions, Scott? Yeah, one question. Thanks, Grant. Mike's coming to Grant.
Yeah, Scott. So it begs the question, there's one hurricane amount of data that's going to come out of all this. So from that point of view, who owns that data?
And I'm gonna go back to precision agriculture and what's going on, at least in North America. We have a number of telematics providers. We have a number of cloud storage locations. And generally what almost everybody in the US says is the farmer owns the data, okay? Well, that's all well and good. But I think the bottom line is you got to read the fine print in the user agreements, okay? And so as we go forward, I think the data generators are going to have to be aware of the fact when they put their data in data repositories, more than likely the repository is going to license that data in some form or fashion. We got to be careful though, because I'm going to remind everybody without data that we're able to aggregate, a lot of this intelligence is not going to work. And so I know it's kind of a chicken and egg scenario. I know that everybody would like to monetize their data as they contributed to it. But we've also seen a number of farmers here in the US that understand if they don't contribute, there's going to be nothing to aggregate and nothing that comes back and benefits them. So I know it's a very difficult time. I know it's a concept that a lot of farmers are very passionate about. I get that. It's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. At Ohio State, one of the things we're working on with one of our National Science Foundation centers is the ability to democratize artificial intelligence. In other words, make it widely available to everybody at a very low cost. We'll see where everything goes. The marketplace is going to determine a lot of what happens. Great question.
Yeah, good question indeed. Hey, thank you so much, Scott. Can I ask everybody to put their hands together for Scott, please?
Well, thank you very much. It was great being with you, and best of all, the upcoming cropping season, or during the cropping season.
Yep, that's awesome, Scott. Thank you so much.